vintage is an interesting word because, you think of vintage and what do you think of? You think of like old, right? Or like long time ago. So if it's from that time, it's vintage. And what vintage means with wine is that the time that a certain crop of grapes were grown, harvested, and went through the process of making wine, they would say it's vintage, 1968. And so if it was a good year for grapes, for harvesting, the flavor, everything went well, and the climate, the environment, that meant that it made a great tasting wine. What if we can walk through our situations? Or what if you can point to something in your past and say, you know what, that was a good moment. That was a vintage moment where I was more aware of God's presence. I felt him, I heard him, I responded to him. But what if we had those vintage moments where we could point back to him when we go through something the next time? Where we go back and we say, you know what, I had a vintage moment with God back when, and so I know he's real. I know he can show up in the midst of my circumstances. I know that he can prove that he's in charge, large and in charge, that's right. And so what if we could have that type of vintage faith where we can recall moments, where you can walk through moments, where you just know that God is there.